Hello, people. It's Tim here. Oh, there we go. That'd be better. It's been a minute since I've done a video. Um, Yesterday, March the 24th, 2022, was my 35th birthday. Now, I don't tell you that to get birthday wishes from people. Um, but 35 is an interesting one for me. And it was probably the most melancholy birthday of my adult life, but in a really honest way. I'm not really sure what direction I'm going to go in this video, but I just thought I'd get the camera on and shoot and record. But basically, I googled the average age of a human on Earth, physical life, and it said 69.8 years old, which would mean that 35, 34.9 would be halfway through the average age of a life of a human on Earth. Now it said in the West, the average age, that was for a man. So that wasn't, you could go in the average age of a human, an average age of a man versus a woman. And then you could go and, localize your area where you live, where you grew up, which was more like 77 or something like that. But one thing I learned from my family, I think from my grandma lived to, I don't know her exact age, I think 97, maybe 98. On one side, my gran on the other side, I think she lived to the same age or even possibly 99. I'm not sure. But basically, that did not mean anything about quality of life. And I think there was a lot of resistance that kept her living on. And you hear stories of plenty of kind of, I don't know. It's hard to compare and you don't really know people's, I don't barely know myself. How can I know someone else? But you hear people die at 60, like healthy-ish, or to a degree. There's some reason they pass, of course, but healthy people, women, will ever die at 60. And then I got my grandma who didn't seem particularly healthy. She only got water when she drank tea with plenty of sugar. Lived to that age. So age is an interesting thing, but at 35, seeing that it's people might say, "Oh, Tim, you're about health, or you try to live healthily," which is a drive. But again, that doesn't mean that you're going to live longer than someone who doesn't. There's so many other factors at play, and that, of course, you could go into the emotional stuff, the childhood that you have that creates emotional blocks and resistance within you that then it takes longer for you to, or you can perish quicker or longer or whatever. It's so complicated. But what I was, the point of this is, and the reason I felt like, I don't know, talking, sharing, and like I say, I'm not doing this for birthday wishes or people to feel sorry for me. So I'm going to turn the comments off. I just feel like, this is to share rather than to have a discussion in another one maybe. But and I feel like this might kind of trigger some people in some ways when I say that I feel is multi-layered, right? I feel less happy than probably previous birthdays, but also more in truth than ever. And so I really have a sense that my happiness in previous times was no real true happiness. It was more like addictive happiness. And I'm not by any means a party animal, but I've certainly had birthdays where I've a few years ago I did sassafras, which is kind of a plant. I think they make MDMA out of that plant, and probably for the last 10 years before that, I probably smoked weed on my birthday or around the day. And I've had some good ones where I've gone for hikes with friends over, a few years ago. Last year we did Ninja Warrior. They were fun days. But I feel like there's more, as I'm trying to get to the root of like some of my how do I put this? I'm starting to recognize more the addictions that I'm in, and I'm starting to challenge them more, and not go to them as much. Now, by no means have I solved, and still it's very much the physical addictions that are more obvious than the emotional ones. But even then, the emotional ones, I'm trying to keep more distance from certain relationships because I can recognize emotional addictions at play, which then leaves me on days like yesterday when I only really saw like my sister and my niece and nephew on my birthday, because of wanting to challenge addictions. And when you challenge addictions, the discomfort arises because the discomfort, the pain, the anger, the sadness is below the addiction. That's what's making sense to me. So when I'm challenging them and not trying to, and recognizing them as just like, I'm just tired of going to that over and over again. And I'm just like in this in-between stage where I'm not going to it, but I'm not willing to feel whatever emotion it is that drives it, the emotion that I want to cover up with the addiction. Like when I don't chase the addiction or have the addiction met, the discomfort that's there, which leads me to feel less happy than I have. But at the same time, I was never really happy. I'm just close to the truth of my sadness. And that yeah, like I say, I'm not going to have comments on because I feel like this might trigger people. People are like, you know, blah, blah, blah. Or you know, it could go either way. Or you know, you've got so much to be grateful for, that kind of stuff as well. And you just can't. I don't think you can force gratitude. And I do still feel it on days when I feel like I'm kind of more in my purpose, or you know, you feel more fulfilled, or being creative. I do get certain moments of like a more grounded happiness, you know. But so that was one. There's basically two main themes that I kind of was thinking of when I wanted to talk today, and one of them was like, yeah, I'm 35, maybe halfway through life. I feel, you could say I feel sadder than ever, but actually I just feel more aware of my sadness than ever. I think that's the underlying truth, is I'm just more aware of the pain. That I honestly, I think, I mean, I've sinned plenty in my life, so that's a weight on my soul that I need to work through, either slowly on my own or quickly with God, if that's how it works. You know, that's what I'm trying to do, just working, not just maybe not quite sincere enough to work with God yet, and a lot of other resistances there. But where am I? But I recognize a lot of, in the last few years, I think there's been a heightened awareness of people starting to become aware of their own issues and emotional issues, like fundamentally, and they might be aware of their addictions and stuff, but they might be starting to sense that there's an emotional current that drives it all, of that, or the 21 days fasts, or 21 days, you know, do something for 21 days and you make it a habit. Like all that stuff just doesn't work. Like all the willpower in the world won't change your will. Like it doesn't. Speaking from experience, and maybe many people that watch this feel the same, like you've tried to force yourself to change, and you've felt glimmer, like, oh, I have changed, and then something, you feel a little bit perturbed, frustrated, overexcited or over sad, and suddenly you're right back into the thing that you thought you'd let go of. But I think there is really a growing awareness of people in the West. I can't speak for other areas. I think we have much more weight on us, like in the sense that we have much more access to sin. Like we have entitlement and superiority over like most of the world, and our access to our comforts, and how little we often, I think, we think about the consequence of them to the planet or the people on Earth. Not saying this as someone who's like solved it, like not preaching from a high tower or anything like that, but I just recognize. So in the West, we're really not happy. Like the fact of how much we do chase and need daily like pick me ups in whatever form that is, like chemical, food, drugs, drink, shopping, fake friendships that are just like feeding addictions, sex with, I think porn seems to be a huge issue. Most people in the West aren't happy. I'm one of them. I'm becoming aware of it. And the truth is relieving, actually. Like, that's maybe partly why I'm sharing, maybe for other people. Like, the truth has been relieving to me to start to become aware why I have sadness and pain and anger. Like, oh, I have got issues and I have acted in many sinful ways towards other souls and beings and of God's creations. And there's a cost to that. Like, I can see that there's a cost to that now. And maybe my motivation selfish is because I don't want to hurt anymore. So that's why I don't want, rather than I want to love others, so I stop. It's like, I don't want to be in pain, so I stop. So my motivation is still not fully pure, but I'm just trying to like slow down because we can add up, things can add up quickly. And so I've done interviews before, I think like on London Real, and they ask you like, what advice would you give to yourself, to your younger self? And I always like maybe certain arrogance, or was like, no regrets, just keep going, keep asking questions, like follow your curiosity, that kind of thing. Honestly, I wish I kind of understood sin better. And when I say sin, for those that I may have said it many times before, but the divine truth's definition of sin is just to miss the mark of love. And I think that's like really simple. It doesn't need to be some scary, big biblical religious word, sin. It's just missing the mark, missing the mark of love. I could have done something more loving, or I could have not done that action which was unloving. That's as simple as that. And so wish I understood that a bit better. Had no real compass. Even I went to church when I was younger. Even that felt not clear. Like a lot of spiritual teachings and even religion just feels really unclear about this stuff now. I would love to have discovered divine truth earlier, but that maybe I need to feel about that. But I attracted it when I did. I think I've got a lot more clarity, but it could have saved me a decade of just taking action, thinking that it was all justified and fine. Yeah. So that's the one half of it, was like just to say, oh, okay, well, I'm halfway through life. It's been a long ride so far. So to have another half again, if it is 70 that I go, that's cool. I feel like I'm really coming into slowing down the train. What did they say? Big ship, tiny rudder. That was me and my sin. Big ship, tiny rudder. Tiny little will to love as the rudder, and big load of sin going in one direction, or headed towards sin. Like, now I want to shrink the ship and grow the rudder, grow the wheel, and work on the sin for the next half of my life. Now I have an intellectual and greater understanding. Thanks to divine truth. Like, that's what I have to say. Who I recently went out to Australia, spent 7 weeks there, and maybe I'll do a video on that. I'm hesitant to do a video directly on that. Quite a few people that know I went have asked me about that event, but I think I'm hesitant because I don't want to do it a disservice, but also maybe it's better I could speak on it. So that's it. Halfway through life. Man, it's been a long ride. I feel like I've done a lot already. And, half of that was growing up. 20 years of that was going through school, 18 years going through school and growing up physically. And then the second half was like, what do I actually want to do with this grown up life, which I still feel like I'm 12, really. I've got so much growing up to do. That was one thing that Jesus told me. Like, I'm like a little boy. And that's pretty much one of the reasons that drove me to go out there. I feel like a little boy, like in many ways, in my ability to like what's functional to a human to, you know, create and build a safe environment to live in. Like I can't do that. I've just always earned money in other ways so that I can pay someone else to do that, pay for rent in a house that someone else has bought and built, you know. I just know how to make money in current society enough to survive. Like that's how much I've grown up. Like, but what does that say on you know, God's earth, on God's realm? Like, is that growing up as an adult? Is that growing up? Is that really becoming a man? Is that real masculinity? Just making money, like being able to get social status and make money? I've got big doubts about that. So, some mother growing up. Hopefully, in the next half of life, I can actually like grow myself up. My mum did all my washing, cooking, cleaning, so I got that from. That's what I look to women for. My dad could do loads of DIY stuff, but whenever I, okay, maybe once or twice tried to do it with him, there was just huge impatience and attack towards me and anger. And so I just never drawn, okay, but dad can look after the house, mum can do the cooking, cleaning. Those are like, so now I have resistance to, not huge, but yeah, deep cleaning is something I definitely struggle with. And then DIY stuff, I don't have any confidence with. So those are two emotional things that I need to, hopefully in the next half of my life, I can work through. Growing myself up in the next 35 years, you know? That's part one. Part two, the other part I wanted to talk about is what the last few years, those that follow the channel would have seen that I've done a lot of book reviews on books that really inspire me at the moment. And those are books that are from humans that have passed over. So they've left their physical body into their spirit body, which is just the body when we sleep, you know, a third of our life. We're in a sleep state. What do you think we're doing? We're in our spirit body, you know, for a lot of that in the spirit world. Now, reasons we don't remember it, Divine Truth have answers on that. I'm not deep enough into it to have a full knowing of it, but it makes fully sense to me that we're sleeping, we have a spirit body. I've done a bit of like astral projection before where you, in the moment, you're like, wow, that was pretty epic. And then you start to have, did that happen? Those kind of things. But yeah, I have a real feeling that we have a spirit body. When we die, we just go into the spirit body, into the spirit world. And so these books that I've shared are channeled. The spirits that have passed over are sending the messages to a mediumistic human. A mediumistic human is someone who can communicate through hearing it, through thoughts, through writing. The spirit can control the arm. Now people go, oh, you know, this nonsense or dark. You know, people think Christianity think anything to do with spirits is all dark. And yet Jesus was mediumistic and materialized the body to come back. So unless it's Jesus, it's dark. Every other spirit is dark, but that's obviously not the case. They're the humans that have passed over. There are good ones and more evil ones with evil intentions, and some that are trying to help. So these books channeled, and again, mediumship is like it's a muscle. I believe it makes sense that it's a muscle that humans have the capacity to work on, but it's just something that is not, in most cases, no one helps to develop it. Like if we went to school and from 5 years old we were working on ability to communicate with the spirit world, then it would be a muscle. But whatever we get fed from childhood to 18, 20, that is what gets developed, and we just get fed intellectual stuff and not other human abilities that we can develop. And so I remember, I think I saw like some spirits occasionally when I was younger then, but because it wasn't developed, and the opposite like is actually rather because of Hollywood, TV shows, fears within my family, like anything to do with ghosts and spirits is 99% of the time is just shown to be dark by that, or, you know, yeah, kids' horror stories and all this stuff is just, so not even developing it. I didn't even not develop it. It actually got shrouded because of fears get put in place to do with anything to do with that. So, but I have a full belief that this is a ability that some humans have a greater capacity than others to develop it. What I read, it seems like different humans have different strengths. So like I say, someone might have ability to hear it better. Someone might have ability to see spirits better. Someone might have ability to, like I say, I think automatic writing or something like that it's called. I can't quite remember. But so these books were channeled by people who are mediumistic. Now, a lot of them are 100 or so years old, because back then, if you read enough books from back then, you see the spirituality, like, and the connection to spirits was much more acknowledged then, and there was a real science to it that was getting developed. And then the World War came in, 2 world wars came in, and that whole natural ability has been really like suppressed or whatever, and gone. And then this new religion of scientism has come in that just says that anything beyond the physical is not real, and it's all just make believe and made up. So I have a strong belief in this stuff. You see our ancestors, you read enough books, it seems like it was very much more accepted before, and now we've gone much further from it. But anyway, since reading these books, and just did a retreat recently, and we had a book club, and so one of the books I'd mentioned here, Wander in the Spirit Land, one of the books, Through the Mists by Robert James Lees. I'm just reading No So La, so I think I'm going to do a book review on that. That's Chico Xavier, a Brazilian medium. That book's from like 1944. The World Unseen. Then there's even like astral projection books I've read where people can actually remember where they go in the spirit world. So all of this research I'm doing is just such an important subject for a human to think about. I think, like, what happens when we die? I think we're just fed that it's impossible to know, or that if humans did know, it would be common knowledge because it would be in the papers, you'd be taught it in school, your family would know about it. And it's like, whether it's been a conscious effort to hide it or not, it's really hidden. But there is a knowing that when you look into this stuff and you research enough of it, there's like a key and a lock situation in the soul, or I don't know what it is, but there's a resonance that you feel that, like, that feels truthful, and it can be like that direction feels truthful, like something in there. But I don't, like, that's kind of how I felt with a lot of spirituality, was like beliefs in reincarnation for a while and things like that. But they weren't like knowings, they were just like, it feels loving that something carries on, but I don't really know. But when you read enough, there's like a clearer picture. Like, there's so much overlap in all the different stories that it paints like this clearer picture of what happens, that there is a life after death, that you carry on all your same thoughts and ideas. You don't just suddenly all knowing, or you don't just suddenly boom, pop, one breath out, one breath in, you're in another baby, or, this is what my understanding from what the overlap that I'm reading that's resonating with my soul. Like, ultimately, I feel like as a human, you have an ability to know this stuff. Like, when you don't have loads of blocks to it, when you have a certain openness, when you use your mind like an airlock to the heart, like to the soul, often people won't even let things in the airlock, or they'll just spit it out the airlock. Like, let it in the airlock, let it ruminate. It doesn't have to, it's not just because you have allowed it in your head, it doesn't mean it's in your heart. Sit with something, think on it, research around it. Then you can, there's a feeling. Like, my other YouTube channel used to be called I Feel Truth. Like, I do believe that. I didn't realize how insensitive I was to feeling before, but I had a sense that you can feel truth even then. And I still believe that's true. And so researching, like, what they say, that only two things true in life is death and taxes, right? Well, I'm happy to pay my taxes, like, boom, do that, and I'm gonna die. Cool. So taxes paid, let's look at that death thing. Like, turn into these rather than, like, I think it could have been something that we taught in school or talk about, but it's on every level. People are so scared of that discussion. But when you turn into it, like everything you're scared of, the monster shrinks. And actually, that's part of what's given me so much more, like, lack of fear of death. Like, don't get me wrong, if someone popped in through there with a shotgun, I think I would, poo myself. But in terms of what's coming, it's, if anything, it's got me somewhat, like excited for it, but also given me much more direction for how to spend the next half of my life on earth, like, and what matters. Because one of the themes that comes through in all of these books is that every farthing, every penny, what's the quote? I forgot the quote. Everything is accounted for. What you reap, what you sow in the spirit world. Like, it becomes a lot clearer. We're reaping what we sow now. That's what I've become aware of. The first half of this talk was about me being aware of reaping what I've been sowing for the last 15 years or more. But in all of them, it becomes much more apparent that in the spirit world, like, it's more obvious the weight of our sins of our life on earth, and that gives you direction that, like, love is the important thing to focus on. Now, that's, of course, comes down to definitions of love, and trying to align with God's definition of love is then the challenge there. But even just having that as an intention, I think, has shifted some things in me in my day-to-day life. Flipping annoying and long. Like, you have to, it's like I guess it's the rebirth, right? It's like you just, everything strips things away, makes you have to, like, really check everything, like check yourself constantly. Lots of, yeah, introspection and self-reflection. But in the long run, I feel like this is the fastest way to not like have a huge resistance towards the end of life as you, like, skidding into your coffin or whatever. Which, by the way, I definitely coffin, not getting burnt. Like, at least, like, let the ground have my flesh to eat. Don't just burn it. And I took all this stuff from Earth, and no, you can't have it back. Anyway, side note, as we come skidding to our grave, right? Have a bit more, yeah, awareness where we're going and how to cross over with a more, like, people just talk about legacy and stuff, and it's just mostly to do with money and status on earth, or like records or size of businesses and stuff. But it's I don't think any of that matters. It's just like the positive impact you can have, which I think all sounds great, and everyone wants to, believe positive impact. But I don't, what positive impact am I having right now? Don't know. Hopefully I can. And I don't, even that's, like, I guess, an ego trip to a degree, right? But it's just like love for love's sake. That's the game. There's a really good book I read recently, actually, when I was in Australia. Let me go into a little story here, called The Prodigal God. And it was about the story of the prodigal son, but what people miss within that story. And for those that don't know, I'll just briefly go over it. The story of the prodigal son is, there's a father, and he's got a load of land, and he's got a load of animals and crops and slaves. And he's got two sons. I don't know, the slave may be a different issue, but this was the time period when this is a parable Jesus told. And I'm gonna, I cannot live up to that man's shoes in telling of this story. So go read the Bible version. This is filtered through myself. Got a father, he's got two sons, and one older, one younger. They're not twins. And the younger son, he goes, you know what, I'm kind of bored of this. I want to go and explore life. He goes, Father, can I have half of my inheritance now and just like, go? And the father, loving father, goes, you know what, go on, you can have it, and gets his things in a row, gives his son half the inheritance. His son goes away. His older son sticks around. They grafting on the land for years. The younger son goes away, goes and parties, goes and drinks, has sex with lots of women, whatever he does, and then spends all his money. Then eventually, got no money, he ends up working, like, on a pig farm, down in the dumps, realizing, like, man, I screwed up there. I should have just stayed with my dad. I've done all this. I don't feel any happier for it. Maybe if I go back to my father, you know what? I'd rather be there and work as a slave than be where I am right now. So it's feeling genuine repentance for what he'd done, feeling, sorry, and the guilt and the weight of it. Goes back to his father, and just when he's approaching his father's land, his father sees him on the horizon, runs over to him and goes, "Son, you've returned." Welcomes him in big arms. The son didn't know his father was going to welcome him like this. He thought, he's going to have to go back really sorry and really plead and beg with his father. And his father just completely open arm welcomed him in. He goes, "Kill the fattest calf. We're going to have a feast." Now, I don't know if that's how Jesus told it in the first century, but that's kind of, I think that's what it says in the Bible. Now, the oldest son here is a bit pissed off because the youngest son's gone away, spent all his money, come back, and the father just loves him like ever. And the oldest son's like, "Well, hang on a minute. Like, I've been grafting away and I never get a party for me for sticking around or anything like that." And the father's like, "Come on, son, let's be happy. Your brother's back. Like, let's just be happy." And that's kind of the parable. But what this book made me realize, what it highlighted to me, because you're kind of aware of that, the son leaves, goes and parties, and we chase all these sinful things like women, status, money, cars, whatever it is. And then the returning, the father could be seen as God, right? Like returning to like recognizing that stuff didn't satisfy us, and actually the relationship with father and just being around him and being a, humble human working the land, whatever it is. Like that's where the love is in life, not these fake shiny object syndrome. But what's missed from what most people miss, I missed in that story, is that the oldest son represents kind of the spiritual, and a lot of really religious people who are only doing their father's work because someday they'll get rewarded. So when he's bitter that his brothers come home and he's like, "Oh, now he comes back," and all this, he's worried that more of his inheritance is going to get gone, or he's going to share what he's got with his brother once again, even though he's already taken half of what he's got. There's, you're going to divvy it up again or whatever. So it's that message that you can be this younger son and go away, but you can also be the older son, which is where I started definitely falling into, where you just try to follow the laws for law's sake because someday you'll get rewarded, not because it's actually in your heart that you just want to serve and that you can just love every day, that it's just the joy is in the work itself rather than in the reward that you're waiting to get someday. And I just thought that was a really good, it was quite a short book, Prodigal God, but a good lesson for me, because, and for a lot of maybe religious people, and that was the message, I think, that the book says, that Jesus, I've not spoke to him about it, but that Jesus was implying to the rabbis that, you can be this super high priest religious person, but actually be just as far or further from God as the other son if you're not doing it out of the love in your heart, if you're only doing it for what the reward you're going to get at the end of the day. And so I just thought that was a good message for me, and there might be something in you for that if you're listening to this as well. Good parable. So yeah, researching life after death, I don't think can be done too young. If you're in your 20s and your 30s, I think it's something to start thinking about. Could definitely give you the book recommendations that I've shared here. I think it's an absolutely fascinating subject. I think there are answers that can be felt and known. I think Divine Truth do the best job of painting the clearest picture for all of it, for all of like education and love, to like what happens when you die, the spirit world, like, and it's not just make believe, it's logical. There's a flow, and there's like it appears like the loving truth. And I think I'll talk about that when I want to do the book review of Not So Law, because it's a really good book. But then there's stuff on reincarnation. I've been watching a lot of Divine Truth stuff on reincarnation lately as well, and I think that's an issue that I think I want to talk about in another video as a belief. Other than that, I think that's it. That's just what I wanted to share. Who knows how far through the physical life I am? I could be calling in an early passing if I'm, I get too like, and here's another, yeah, something that I want, a final note to end on, what Jesus shared when I was in Australia about the spirit world, and that, because it can be easy to like research the stuff as well and just think, oh man, I can't wait, it sounds so awesome to go there, which is a trap. I've certainly like feel like more like affinity and affection for that world, like, look around here and I can blame the environment around me for how I feel. But just because you pass over it doesn't mean that suddenly it's solved. And actually, he kind of strongly suggests or says, or hints or suggests, says that it's not as obvious in the spirit world, that you can ease your desire has a lot of a stronger and more rapid attraction in that place. So if I have simple desires, things that I don't act out in my awake state, when I fall asleep and in my dreams, I will do things like that, like beat people up or have sex with people I don't know. Choices that I've got the physical world and time and whatever is the qualities of this physical life, I feel I have much more control over, and like can slow down and not act on that. We have less control, and what is the true desires in our soul drive a lot more of our actions in that world, which is why what happens, like I say, what's happening in your dream state, like pay attention to that, because that is what's going on in your soul, and that is some desires that you have potentially that I have to be aware of. I think makes sense that when I pass, okay, that stuff might just start to play out a lot more. So just because I pass, I'm not going to end in some beautiful spirit world where I can just go to, the here and there and have a beautiful house. Like, there's work to be done before I get there, and there's time to do it. But also, I definitely have an emotion of like trying to rush stuff and rush through things, which I can like take my time with. And, that's something that I want to do for the next 35 years, is learn to slow down a little bit, with how much pressure I put on myself. And yeah, that rush energy of rush, whatever emotion that is. Yeah, I think that's it. Happy to wrap it there. 35, no, years don't really mean anything. Like, it's just the qualities. I think, I don't know, I could get into like an intellectual waffle about love that I don't fully comprehend yet, but I just know that's my drive for the next second half of life, trying to understand that, work through more of my blocks to love, my blocks to God, develop that, work on my humility to my emotions, take time for myself, maybe less time on the internet, more time. Airplane mode is closer to God mode, I feel like. Not that you become God mode, but that you can connect more, I think. And also the cameras is another thing. Is like, I feel like we've replaced God with the lens. Like, we can't just experience it. Like, speaking from experience, like, oh, can I just take in this moment, or does this moment have to be captured? Like, God's there with you, taking it in with you. But no, Instagram needs to take it in with me. So we've like kind of replaced the presence of God with the presence of a camera lens, which I have to stay on top of, which is why I don't post every week. But I also think I can share. I think, it's nice to share sometimes as well. Thanks for watching. God bless everyone. See you around.